A few years ago, it was very popular on college campuses for professors to do what they'd call their last lecture. And they would ask, if you had one last lecture, what would you say? What would you tell your students? Well, it's a fun way to introduce the Book of Mormon by asking everyone or your family, what would you write? One piece of paper, what would you write right now so that people would know about you or your circumstances or what you've learned? Joseph Smith explained that Moroni had that opportunity. Moroni wrote one-page summary, his last words, and kind of the things he really wanted you to know. That last page of Moroni's is the title page. Joseph Smith said, the title page of the Book of Mormon is a literal translation, taken from the very last leaf on the left-hand side of the Book of Plates, which contained the record which has been translated, and said title page is not by any means a modern composition, either of mine or of any other man who has lived or does live in this generation. As you read the title page, it's wonderful to see what Moroni emphasizes. He emphasizes his purpose in writing the Book of Mormon. As you introduce the Book of Mormon with your family or friends, you could invite them together with you to underline what purposes you see Moroni writing the Book of Mormon. You can put a little star by it. A lot of times, as I'm marking scriptures, I like to put a star by it because sooner or later I realize, oh, I forgot something. And then I'll put another star, and it doesn't look really messy in my scriptures. The title page is awesome. When President Nielsen was a member of the Quorum of the 12, he said this about the title page.
These two purposes are of great importance. First, this book is to show unto the remnant of the house of Israel what great things the Lord has done for their fathers, and that they may know the covenants of the Lord, that they are not cast off forever. So that's purpose one, relates to the house of Israel and the covenants that God made with his covenant children. Purpose number two is for the convincing of the Jew and the Gentile that Jesus is the Christ, the eternal God. Now here we get back to that little subtitle, Another Testament of Jesus Christ. This is the principal figure in the Book of Mormon. Don't you worry about the weights and the measures and the animals and the history, on the wars and the rumors of wars. Those are just couching in the environment of the day. But you remember that the purpose of the book is to review the covenants that God made with the house of Israel and to convince the Jew and the Gentile that Jesus is the Christ.
President Benson also added, the major mission of the Book of Mormon, as recorded on its title page, is to the convincing of the Jew and the Gentile that Jesus is the Christ, the eternal God, manifesting himself into all nations. The honest seeker of truth can gain the testimony that Jesus is the Christ as he prayerfully ponders the inspired words of the Book of Mormon. As you teach, you can ask, how has the Book of Mormon helped you know that Jesus is the Christ? What has the Book of Mormon taught you about the character of Christ that's brought you closer to him? President Benson continued, over one half of all the verses in the Book of Mormon refer to our Lord. Some form of Christ's name is mentioned more frequently per verse in the Book of Mormon than even in the New Testament. He is given over 100 different names in the Book of Mormon. Those names have particular significance in describing his divine nature. Now, several years ago, in 1978, from the Ensign, there was an article that talked about the names of Christ in the Book of Mormon. And the references to Christ you see on this page. The number of verses per book is also there. One of the amazing stats is it's every 1.7 verses in the Book of Mormon. It talks about Christ. It refers to Christ. Truly, this is another testament of Jesus Christ. I'd encourage you to read that entire article, and there's a link to the content of that in my notes at brothermiller.wordpress.com. One more thing that I think is just incredible for me. In the 1830 edition of the Book of Mormon, the testimony of the three witnesses was at the back of the Book of Mormon. The entire Book of Mormon, then the three witnesses' testimony, and the 8 witnesses' testimony. In some ways, I really like that. You read the Book of Mormon, you read chapter 10, where Moroni invites you to read and ponder about these things and pray to God that you can know they're true. Then the next page you read, and it is the testimony of the three witnesses, a spiritual testimony noting that they saw an angel. They felt the Spirit in their hearts. All three of these men had ample opportunities to deny this witness and never did. They never did. It's just fun. Book of Mormon, you read it, you talk about your testimony, then you have 3 witnesses that explain their testimony, and then 8 witnesses giving that physical description of their testimony. They felt the plates. They saw the engravings. Here's what it looked like. Here's what it felt like. Those witnesses bore their testimonies and never denied it, even though you had quite a few of them who left the church. They had opportunities to say it was all a hoax, but they knew, and they shared it is true. One thing that is a quote by Joseph Smith that I hope is always shared in every lesson, in every family. And it is the principle of what a keystone is. Now, keystone is, put my little cursor there, that center stone of an arch. It distributes the weight of the arch to the left and the right-hand side so the arches stand. Prophet Joseph Smith said, "I told the brethren that the Book of Mormon was the most correct book of any book on earth, the keystone of our religion, and a man would get nearer to God by abiding by its precepts than by any other book." I love President Benson's explanation of this. There are 3 ways in which the Book of Mormon is the keystone of our religion. It is the keystone in our witness of Christ. It is the keystone of our doctrine. It's the keystone of our testimony. Indeed, the Book of Mormon is true, and it is the keystone of our religion. President Benson also said, if they, these the authors of the Book of Mormon, saw our day, and chose these things which would be of greatest worth to us, is not that how we should study the Book of Mormon? We should constantly ask ourselves, why did the Lord inspire Mormon, or Moroni, or Alma to include that in his record? What lesson can I learn from that to help me live in this day and age? So a couple ideas that I've just done. You could do your last message, your last kind of words of advice, your last lecture, and look at Moroni's last message to us on the title page. You can ask, how's the Book of Mormon helped convince you that Jesus is the Christ? Or along those lines, what is your favorite title or name of Jesus Christ? Why is it meaningful to you? What does it teach you about the character of Christ, especially as you look for those names and titles in the Book of Mormon? Now I add a little addendum. The translation process of the Book of Mormon, we know a lot more about today than maybe what we did 50 years ago. I just wanted to add some notes because there is an awesome essay that the church has produced and put on their website, churchofjesuschrist.org, under the Gospel topic Essays. The translation process began April 12th in earnest, 1828. By the 14th of June, they had 116 pages translated. These are going to be 116 pages of the Book of Lehi that end up being lost. They were translated by the Urim and Thummim. Now let me just pause and explain a little about Urim and Thummim. Urim and Thummim probably means lights and perfections. The Urim and Thummim were given to the high priest, or a Urim and Thummim, and is referred to in Exodus chapter 28, verse 30. The Urim and Thummim were kept in the breastplate that was used by Aaron as the high priest. It's described a little bit in 1 Samuel how it was used in divination. And you'll notice here's the outfit that the high priest would wear. And what they would wear right in here, kind of like some blow-ups of it, there would be a breastplate worn on the upper garment. Now this was attached by gold chains, and the Bible describes that there are 3 colors that are used. It was supposed to be 1/3 of a cubit squared and 2 layers thick. And the reason why it was 1/3 of a cubit by 2/3 of a cubit, so it could be folded, and inside it would contain the Urim and Thummim. Now, trivia, if you ever see the coat of arms for Yale University, there's a book there, and the words on that book are Urim and Thummim, which is just kind of fun. A little bit of trivia there. Joseph Smith said of these Urim and Thummim, "Through the medium of the Urim and Thummim, I translated the record by the gift and power of God." Now, the context of him saying that is he had a meeting where he's there, his brother Hiram is there, many people who are going to be the members of the first quorum of the 12, and some of the 70 are in there. They're outside of Kirtland, Ohio. And Hiram is pressuring Joseph, not pressuring, but really influencing Joseph, just tell him how the Book of Mormon was translated. And he just says, I translated the Book of Mormon through the gift and power of God. And he's not going to tell him much more. President Nelson said the details of this miraculous method of translation are still not fully known. Other people add their testimony and give a little bit of detail. Now please know, those who know most say the least about this, and those who know the least sometimes say the most. For Joseph, 1 sentence. One of the things that we've learned is that there was the use of a, looks like chocolate-colored-ish stone. This is known as a seer stone. Joseph obtained this when he was young. And from what we can tell from testimony, especially from Emma, he would use this stone as a means of convenience instead of using the Urim and Thummim, the 2 stones that are bound together, and he would use them to also translate the Book of Mormon. Incidentally, Joseph gave Oliver Cowdery this brown stone. It was in the church's possession for quite a while, and Joseph F. Smith told B.H. Roberts that he could show the brown stone as a part of the Smith family collection. This is a picture of that stone, which is in possession of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints today. As Joseph would translate using this stone, Emma recalls that he would put the stone in a hat and look into the hat and see the words appear. Once again, it's kind of fun to know some of these details, even though Joseph didn't tell us. But I'll tell you a few more details of the translation process from Emma. She stated that when my husband was translating the Book of Mormon, I wrote part of it, and he dictated each sentence word for word, and when he had come to proper names he could not pronounce, or long words, he spelled them out, and while I was writing them, if I made a mistake in spelling, he would stop me and correct my spelling, although it was impossible for him to see how I was writing them down at the time. There was a little bit of a sheet in between the 2 of them, so she could not see. She remarked of her husband Joseph's limited education while he was translating the Book of Mormon, and she was scribe at the time. He could not pronounce the name Sariah. When he stopped for any purpose at any time, he would, when he commenced again, begin where he left off without any hesitation. And one time, while he was translating, he suddenly stopped, paled his sheet, and said, "Emma, did Jerusalem have walls around it?" When I answered yes, he replied, "Oh, I was afraid I've been deceived." He had such a limited knowledge of history at that time. They did not know did not even know that Jerusalem was surrounded by walls. Emma was probably one of those who knew quite well about the translation process. She understood what was happening and was an eyewitness. She also gives kind of for me, one of the funner stories. She said one morning when he was getting ready to continue the translation, something went wrong about the house, and he was put out about it. Something Emma, his wife, had done. Oh, I'm sorry, this is not Emma who said this. Emma, his wife, had done. Oliver and I went upstairs, and Joseph came up soon after the translation, but he could not do anything. He could not translate a single syllable. He went downstairs, out into the orchard, and made supplication to the Lord. I was gone about an hour and came back to the house and asked Emma forgiveness. And when he came upstairs where we were, and then the translation went all right. He could do nothing, save he was humble and faithful. In order to translate, we do know that Joseph had to be able to be humble, and things had to be right in his life. If he wasn't humble, things weren't right with him and Emma, or I think him and anybody, he couldn't have the Spirit, the gift of God, to be able to use these interpretators, Urim and Thummim or the brown seer stone, to translate. And one other thing about the Urim and Thummim. Joseph Knight recollected, "It is 10 times better," Joseph saying, 10 times better than I expected. He remembered Joseph saying. He recalled further the prophet's particular fascination with the spectacles. He seemed to think more of the glasses, or the Urim and Thummim, than he did of the plates, wrote Knight. "For," says he, "I can see anything. They are marvelous." The Urim and Thummim allows you to see things in the past, the present, and the future. If you look at Lucy Mack Smith's book about the prophet Joseph Smith, she writes a little bit about the Urim and Thummim, how he could see past, present, or future. Boy, that'd be a fun thing to be able to ask Joseph some things about, future, past, that we'd understand a little bit better. Oliver Cowdery also gave a few details. Neil A. Maxwell said this. Oliver Cowdery is reported to have testified in court that the Urim and Thummim enabled Joseph to read in English the reformed Egyptian characters which were engraved on the plates. If these reports are accurate, they suggest a process indicative of God's having given Joseph sight and power to translate. If by means of these divine instrumentalities the prophet was seeing ancient words rendered in English and then dictating, he was not necessarily and constantly scrutinizing the characters on the plates. The usual translation process of going back and forth between pondering an ancient text and providing a modern rendering. While the use of divine instrumentalities might also account for the rapid rate of translation, the prophet sometimes may have used a less mechanical procedure. We simply do not know the details. Brother Hiram Smith said that he thought best that the information of the coming forth of the Book of Mormon be related by Joseph himself to the elders present, that all might know for themselves. Brother Joseph Smith Jr. said that it was not intended to tell the world of all the particulars of the coming forth of the Book of Mormon, and also said that it was not expedient for him to relate these things. Whatever the details of the process, it required Joseph's intense personal efforts along with the aid of the revelatory instruments. The process may have varied as Joseph's capabilities grew, involving the Urim and Thummim, but perhaps with a less reliance upon such instrumentalities in the prophet's later work of translation. Elder Orson Proud of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles said Joseph Smith told him that he used the Urim and Thummim when he was inexperienced at translation, but that later he did not need it, which was the case in Joseph's translation of the verses of the Bible. Well, thank you. Thank you for spending a little time with me today. This was a little bit about the introductory pages of the Book of Mormon. If you want more about the notes and want some of the handouts that I'm going to have, go to brotherrmiller.wordpress.com, even though that's probably cut off underneath my picture. brotherrmiller.wordpress.com. Have a great day.